I think we are, in Britain, a litmus test. This is where you guys could end up. So you've got to watch what happens here, because we are going to a very scary place.
We're going to cause the Islamic Revolution here in the West.
I feel I have to censor myself partly because I might get killed by people who live around here. The person who got arrested for 31 months, that was Lucy Connolly. One of the problems was that they were advised by lawyers to plead guilty, and then suddenly she got 2.5 years in prison. Keir Starmer is woefully unpopular. He overdoes, he sort of overcompensates. And some of his tweets are just, they're like much further than what Trump would say. They're like capital letters, we will get rid of all the immigrants, but nothing happened.
It's like, what does make Britain British anymore?
It is scary. We do live a couple of streets away from 2 mosques. We go out and you don't see another white person. Not that I need to see white people, but you don't see someone who's not in some kind of non-British religious garb. And I don't even mind Muslim people being in their kind of dress and their attire. But when it's that many, it's disconcerting. A lot of people think there will be civil war. I just feel like I don't know, it's too late, because I wouldn't want to abandon liberal principles and start kicking people out just because they subscribe to a certain religion, especially when many of them are peaceful. What I won't say is that most are peaceful, because statistics don't bear that out.
All right, I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. Joining me today from across the pond is the host of the Heretics podcast, my friend Andrew Gold. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. What a pleasure to be here.
Wait, is this your Rubin Report debut? Is that possible?
Yeah, we've only done it on mine with you when you came to London.
Well, this is very overdue. I find that hard to believe. I often on this show talk about like the short list of people that make sense, and you are definitely on that short list. But before we get to making sense and all that kind of stuff, for people that don't know you, you used to work at a place called the BBC, which, as far as I understand, is a Hamas-linked terrorist organization. What is that now?
It seems to be. It's a weird thing, the British Broadcasting Corporation. I mean, I didn't actually work there. I just call myself sort of a fallen BBC journalist. I sold the documentary to them. And then
worked in conjunction with them.
In conjunction with. It's my fault, because I have that label as like fallen BBC journalist, because otherwise it would be guy who sold documentary to them. Documentary did really well, and then I got put through this kind of weird re-education camp where I was told I shouldn't be white anymore. And it was just a whole horrible.
I do want to. Yeah, well, tell us that story too. I mean, let's. Why don't we start with some of that stuff, and then we'll get to the issues of the day.
Yeah, that was kind of my red pill moment, I suppose. I was about 27 or something, I'm not sure. So I guess we're talking about 8 years ago, I don't know. And it was peak kind of that new woke era of DEI. It was all being introduced. Everybody was very excited about it. And I was making documentaries as a presenter or host. So kind of like Michael Moore, but not really political. I was on screen and I would go and interview like an exorcist or maybe even Vice Media stuff, but again, not political, but and I sold a documentary to the BBC. I'd sold some to American channels as well that went out on HBO. But this BBC one did particularly well. It won festival awards beforehand, and then with the BBC was placed in their best of list. So everybody was really happy with how well it had done about this abusive exorcist in Argentina. And in that time, I'd also learned to speak 5 languages, because I thought I need to be the best journalist they have. I've got to be the best. So I did all of this stuff because I wanted to be the next kind of big thing there. And after that, I had some meetings with the BBC who looked a bit not very impressed by me. And then they said, look, if you want to, you've got to go through our production company. So I was put in touch with production companies. I was put in touch with about 50 or so over about 5 years. And every single one of them that I went in with a bunch of ideas, I had this mad stuff. It was like gay conversion in Ecuador, people who make their adulterers stand in ant hills in Bolivia, like crazy stuff around the world, pedophiles in Germany. And they were so excited. Every production company was like, oh my God, how did you get this access? Because I've been living around the world and doing all this stuff. And every single one at one point, I'm talking about not 99%, 100% of them said, look, if we put this forward, by the way, there's absolutely no way you can be on screen. We cannot show. And I said, but I've got the access to these people. I speak their languages. I literally their languages. And they said, there's absolutely no way. We can't even go to them with that. So I was treated pretty terribly, I think. And the worst part about that was that nobody believed me when I said it. It's only years later that people have said, oh, of course that was happening. Nobody wanted to admit it was happening. And it's a strange thing when it's something we're so proud of, DEI, that they have to deny it so much. It's this strange paradox there. So that's how I sort of got started. Go on.
So you were a filmmaker. Basically, your politics, I think, are at least now very similar to mine, but I describe you as kind of like an old school, sane liberal. Yeah. You get red-pilled because they pretty much were like, well, we don't want a white guy hosting these, far out there documentaries. And then, okay, well, you realize, all right, I can't be part of this system because you can't magically change your skin color. So then what do you do?
I started.
Well, there are tanning lotions. There are things you can do, peptides and things now.
It's funny you say that because look, not every single person in all of these production companies was necessarily on board with it. They just knew that this is the system. This is how it works. Right. Not much you can do about it. So they would often joke with me. They said, "Hey, we can break your legs if you want," because then you're a minority. Some guys would say, "Are you sure you're not gay?"
Right, I was going to say, you can sleep with a dude, that'll get you the gig.
Yeah, although as you probably know, nowadays being gay is like being Jewish.
It doesn't work.
It counts against you. So, and I remember one particular meeting when I hated myself for this, but it was about 3 or 4 years into this. I was on minimum wage. All my friends were finding ways to work and do really well, and I was just stuck at this point, and it was depressing. And I thought, okay, I hate myself for this, but I'm going to do it. And halfway through this meeting, I said, I am Jewish, right? And in the UK, that's like 0.1% of the 0.5% of the population. Is tiny. It's 200,000 people here. That's a minority, surely. This guy, and I don't even remember who it was, but I remember he just laughed and he said, well, if I said what I really think about that, then, well, I can't say that, basically. So yeah, at that point, I was angry and I just thought, well, screw this. I'm just going to do it myself. I had a list of hundreds of people I wanted to interview, just interesting people around the world. And COVID hit. I was living in Berlin at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm at home. I've got a laptop and I got a lamp next to me and all of that. It looked terrible. Sellotape to sort of put things on top of a shoebox, that kind of stuff. And I interviewed people like, somebody who left the Westboro Baptist Church, just extreme people, interesting people, and whatever. I did that for like 2 or 3 years. The channel grew huge, got to 300,000 subscribers after a couple of years. And then October 7th happened. So I said, well, okay, we talk a lot on this channel about cults. We did a lot on Scientology, Jehovah's Witnesses, Hasidic Jews. There's an issue with Islam as well. And my own fans or viewers or subscribers went bananas, went absolutely angry at me, did really badly, the videos. I lost loads of subscribers. And I went, right, okay, this is supposed to be a channel about cult think and group think. And I said one thing you guys don't like and everyone's gone, I'm out of here. So I thought, this is not fun anymore. So I immediately abandoned that channel, started a new channel called Heretics from scratch. And it's been like a year and a half. You came on it and it's up to about 600,000 subscribers in a year and a half. So it's just like, it's doing well. And it's because it's speaking to a British public who, even more than American people, are not seeing that side of things. They're only being fed, as we, to go back to the beginning, the BBC line on things. So that's my sort of...
Right. So it's really fascinating because in essence, you were sort of canceled or like half pre-canceled by the mainstream because you didn't fit the intersectional calculator. Then you talk about their holy grail as an independent person. Then you have to abandon your own project. Now you start Heretics. And when I saw you in London, I think we went there from Heathrow. We went right to you. You're a fine interviewer. So you are across the pond right now. I talk about your country a lot. It seems to me you guys are in like a seriously dire situation. So before we even dive into that, how comfortable are you as an interviewer, and in this case as an interviewee, saying whatever you want to say right now? Because we know about all of the laws around free speech and people being, arrested literally for tweets and that stuff. So let's start with that, and then we can dive into the specific issues. Do you feel the need to censor yourself in any way throughout this conversation?
I probably do, not necessarily because of the authorities. But that could happen. I feel I have to censor myself partly because I might get killed by people who live around here. So that's a part of it, and partly because you have to. You can't just be, I guess, extreme in some respects because you won't be able to bring people with you. I think. The thing with the authorities,
sure, but you're not extreme. I mean, I know you well enough to know you're not extreme. That's the point.
but I get angry. And I feel like I was angry after the synagogue attack a couple of days ago. At the time of recording, I was very angry. I have had interviewees afterwards, when we've been editing their stuff in the UK, say to me, hey, can you just cut this bit and that bit? Because new things have happened whereby police have turned up at people's doors and things like that. Generally, what tends to happen is that they spend the day in a cell or something and then they leave, and it's a whole big thing. It's a big story. If that happened to me, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So we're not yet at that point where I'm that scared about what I say. The person who got arrested for 31 months, that was Lucy Connolly, and she's among many. One of the problems was that they were advised by lawyers to plead guilty, that they would be fine, and then suddenly she got 2.5 years in prison. Now, we have child molesters who don't see inside a cell for one day. She got 31 months. So the idea that wasn't political is absurd. The pushback on that has been huge, though, and hopefully, we're getting somewhere with that. But you're right to point that out. It is really scary. And I think we are, in Britain, a litmus test for you guys. Like, this is where you guys could end up. So you've got to watch what happens here, because we are going to a very scary place.
Right. Well, when I saw you back in February of this year, it was for Jordan Peterson's art conference. That's why I was in London. And then a few days after I saw you, I was at a dinner with about 20 people from the conference, many of our friends, and I don't need to name drop, but people who've been on my show.
I think I was there.
There were a couple. Oh, maybe you were at this. Maybe you were at this one. Oh, I think you were at this dinner. But one of the things that we were discussing was how all of us sort of felt we should not tweet exactly what we thought, because I had plenty of thoughts as I was walking down the streets of London, not feeling safe and blah, blah, blah. And it was the first time in my life, particularly as an American, that I was ever like, boy, maybe I just won't say what I think. I don't need to be, not that I was going to be arrested as an American, but I didn't want to be held up at the airport or whatever else might happen. And then, of course, several of the people there were British citizens.
Yeah. Well, you and I think you joked about that as well and said, can you release it once I'm back in the States?
Oh, right.
Yeah. But the fact that we're even at that point where that's semi-serious, it's like, it is scary. People have failed to, they've lost their understanding of the difference between, stopping violent crimes and just, having to put up with people saying things they don't like. And unfortunately, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to, if I had a restaurant and the guys who are the most fervent lefty lunatics who I think are just insane, they came into my restaurant, I would serve them food. I'd hope they have a good time. I would speak to them politely and we'd probably have a good conversation. That unfortunately has been lost on the left across the world right now. So it's scary.
Okay, so putting a pin in the free speech portion of it, although I suspect it'll kind of frame everything we're doing here, broadly, and then we can connect this to the Manchester thing. I try to be careful when I talk about your country, because I really do think things are dire. And when I go back each year, for the last couple of years now, I've sensed that it's gotten worse each time. We see the videos about free speech. We see the Hamas rallies, all of the stuff. What level of alarm do you think we are at right now?
Maybe 10 out of 10. Maybe 10 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's so much worse than anybody is willing to admit. And the issue, I mean, I know I guess I was a little bit, I didn't push that hard when you asked about, it was concern about free speech, right? That is a concern. It's a 6 out of 10, a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. The concern here for me is multiculturalism and what it's done to this country. And I think it's almost impossible for Americans to understand this without coming here. You did come here. But even I interviewed Ann Coulter recently, and she tried to say to me with a straight face that it was just as bad having Mexican immigration as what we're getting from Islamic countries. Now, I totally respect her point. And I get it because I've been to the States and everything's in Spanish. Now I speak Spanish, so I'm fine with that. But then the beheadings and the mafia and all of that stuff, I get it. This is something this is medieval. What is happening to these are medieval, and what is going on in America is a similar culture. So, we have to take in a certain number of refugees, I suppose, but I don't know why they are not going to other countries with similar cultures. Well, I do know why, because it's about colonization and power. And so it's got to a point where I think it's irreversible. That's why I say 10 out of 10. And everybody's sitting around going, "Oh, stop the boats!" Now, the boats is in reference. It's like your Trump wall,
Right.
Don't let people are coming over from France, and they're saying that they and it's mad because as if France was at war, like people had to leave France to get to England because they just prefer coming to England because they want to spread to England. So the stop the boats.
Well, soon enough, there will be legit refugees coming out of France. I mean, some of them. Well, the Jews of France are leaving, and they're all going to Israel. I mean,
yeah, well, they wouldn't come to the UK. That's
right.
That's, and where do you go? And I think about this all the time because Islam is spreading very fast throughout South America. It's spreading very fast through Africa. So if you want to go somewhere, I mean, I've said this before: Texas, Florida. These are the only people. Americans have a sense of nationalism that I think will do its best to stop this,
So you mentioned, okay, stop the boats, that seems to be like, it's like the easiest bumper sticker answer to all of this, as if you stop everything, all the future immigration, that will stop the problem. But your argument, which is obviously the same argument that I've been even making in the United States, is that there is now a problem on our shores. Do you see any, when they had the Tommy Robinson rally, was it Restore, what was it called?
Unite the Kingdom.
Unite the Kingdom, sorry. When you saw that, you saw millions of patriots, British patriots out on the streets. I mean, does that give you any hope, or do you just think that the numbers just don't work anymore? And clearly your political establishment doesn't seem to want to do anything. I mean, Starmer is worse. It just keeps getting worse, it seems.
The problem, I think, boils down to, if we look at the origins of this, and maybe if we look at it from an ideological aspect, is cousin marriage. So Britain banned cousin marriage, or England, or whatever it was back then in the 6th century, and it led to the great amazing societies and civilizations that we have today in the States and the UK, because what it meant was that people stopped just doing things within their own clan or their family and looked to something wider, and it created something that was the nation state. So we had some sense of pride and nationalism and those kinds of things. We started doing business with people outside of our own families because we weren't just marrying our own cousins. I imagine there was also a bit of an IQ lift when we stopped marrying our own cousins. British Pakistanis still marry their cousins in the United Kingdom at a rate of about 50 to 60%. It's unbelievable. But what that means is, now that we are just a bunch of individuals, which I like a lot of individualism, I do like that. That's where a lot of liberty comes from. But if we don't also have something to rally around, which is a flag or the nation state or something, whatever Britain is, because at the moment it's just an airport for people to do what they want here, then we are up against a culture that, as you say, is already embedded here. There's a lot of cousin marriage. There's a lot of silos now where people don't even speak English. They only speak with one another, and they don't integrate. And why would they integrate? Because we don't encourage them to, because all we do is denigrate our own country. So yes, there were people we don't know. Some say millions at the United Kingdom rally. Some say there were only 150,000. It's probably somewhere between the two. What they're able to do, I don't know, until some of the mainstream celebrities in particular start to change what they allow the rest of us to speak about.
But what would it even be? Let's say you got the political leadership that you wanted and the culture shifted enough so that whether it was Nigel's party or whatever you think would have to be the incoming party comes in, and enough people, I mean, what do you actually, are you talking soldiers on the street have to kick these people out? What actually has to be done?
A lot of people think there will be civil war. And I just feel like I don't know, it's too late, because I wouldn't want to abandon liberal principles and start kicking people out just because they subscribe to a certain religion, especially when many of them are peaceful. What I won't say is that most are peaceful or that the large majority are peaceful, because statistics don't bear that out. I grew up believing that it was 0.01%. That's what my family, who are Jewish, would tell me. Oh, don't worry about Islamism, it's like 0.1%. We know it's not. We know we have 40,000 jihadis on the terror watch list in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has made it also, they also now count terrorists as people who believe that their culture is being replaced by immigrants. So now I'm a terrorist, basically. So that list is going to get a lot larger now. What would have to happen? I hate being so defeatist. I don't think anything can happen, because Farage can't come in and just start deporting everybody. And even if he wanted to do that and be so illiberal as to deport just innocent, nice people, which I wouldn't want to see happen, he wouldn't be able to, because we have a deep state here. I discussed this with former Prime Minister Liz Truss when she came on Heretics. She was Prime Minister for about, a few days. I mean, it was very short.
Literally,
but she said, but there's nothing you can do, because we have civil servants who are people who are not elected, who are just there. And these people, as we know, in any kind of bureaucratic department, tend to be ideologues. So we would reach the point where we are all hanging from, cranes, and they would still be sitting there saying, oh, come on, guys, it's not everyone. So, yeah, I don't know what can happen.
You've mentioned sort of the end of liberalism twice. I mean, do you think this is a flaw of liberalism? I've discussed this with a couple guests. I'm a little conflicted about the answer to that. I mean, I personally, we played a clip of Douglas Murray earlier this week on my show saying that enough with, like, at the end, if liberalism is only designed to hang itself, then it is a flawed ideology.
Yeah. I think there's a flaw in it. And unfortunately, look, maybe it wouldn't have been flawed if we didn't have this issue with Islamism across the Middle East. And unfortunately, when you look back at it, it seems obvious, right? We were all liberals running around going, hey, individualism, how wonderful, and all of these things. And everybody should be free to practice whatever they want and any religion they want and all of those things. None of us wanted to step up and say, well, hang on a minute. It might be a flaw in liberalism. Now, when I've interviewed Andrew Doyle, he's a very, very smart man and he's very well read. And so he's read all of the guys who wrote about liberalism. And there are different strains of liberalism. So he will tell you, and he'd be able to tell you much better than me, he'll tell you the exact person, the philosopher, what they said. And he will say his idea of liberalism is not accepting illiberal ideas. The problem, I suppose, is who gets to decide what an illiberal idea is. But I think you and I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, well, I think at the end, if you want to defend a liberal society, you might need some scary conservatives that are guarding the door. I think that's what you guys are up against right now. By the way, I think it's the exact same thing we're up against. We have much better defenses, not only legally because of our Constitution related to free speech, but also we're a much more armed society. As you know, we were born in revolution, like we have states' rights. There's a lot of things that give us an advantage there. So how do you... I mean, I don't want to go that dark, really, but so how do you wake up every day as a citizen and say, I have a future here, or I'm going to stay here, or there's a way that this is going to work? I mean, you just gave me the 10 out of a 10 alarm.
Yeah, well, do you know Peter Boghossian?
Of course.
Yeah,
He's a good friend. Been on the show many times.
He messages like he's got this idea.
He got the high hell out of Portland, I'll tell you that. He lives in Hungary now.
Yeah, he did. I think he's moved again, but he he says that we need to surrender. So his idea, and you never know with Peter if he's being facetious. He's just trying to he's like, the British people, you've got to surrender. You've got to surrender. That's it. They'll let you live. And it's like, well, they won't. They won't. That's the point. But I don't even know what that means. He's going to, I said, come on at some point and we'll have this debate about whether we should surrender.
All right. I'm going to text him about that right after.
He messages like once every week and he's like, surrendered yet? So I don't know if he's just being a troll, but he's such a great mind though, and he's brilliant on this. And like you, he's been.
Well, is his argument live as a dhimmi? I mean, is that what his argument is? Like, accept that you're never going to beat them, so live as a second-class citizen, pay your tax, your jizya, and live as a dhimmi.
That seems to be. I don't want to paraphrase him, and he might say, you know, I apologize to him for paraphrasing on another. But maybe
I'll have him on to follow.
Have him on to speak about it. He'll love that. He'll love that. He's a lovely man, and he says that. I said, look, that's not an option. I said to him, it's not because I think I'm more optimistic than you, Peter. It's because that is not an option. That's us dead. So it's the same result either way. So I don't know. You look, it depends. There is as there is in the States, there's an elite class, a liberal elite class. I hate saying it because it sounds, you know how it sounds, the liberal elite. But there is that class. They do exist. I saw a popular football or soccer player called Gary Neville. He was just posting something on Twitter. He's been running around taking down British flags. This is a guy who represented England in World Cups and things, taking down British flags because he said, you know what that means really. And it's like, well, what does it mean, Gary? So that is a huge problem right now. Now, what they don't understand is they live in like barbed wire security complexes so far from any of this stuff. And people who have to live every day, I mean, in America, in the Fox News, I know they've talked about no-go zones. I'm not sure they're exactly no-go zones. You're not going to get killed if you go down there, I don't think. But they are areas that look nothing like what you imagine Britain to be. And they are places where there's, just sort of, it looks like, I suppose, modern day Pakistan, or not even modern day. People carrying.
Well, there's places that it's obvious you're not welcome. That's what I would say. Having been there enough and drove, having go through certain parts of London, or the drive to Oxford or Cambridge, or when I went to see you, and there's just signs in Arabic everywhere, and you see Palestinian flags, and it's like, they clearly don't want me there. I don't think they want you there.
That's definitely true. And you know what's frustrating is, there's two separate arguments, because one is about multiculturalism and whether it can ever work. And I don't think it can long term. But the one we're having really is about Islam, because Hindus and Sikhs and Jews and Buddhists have been doing pretty damn well. And I don't want that to be taken, there'll be some people who are against it and will say, well, hang on a minute, and I respect those arguments as well. I'm not I'm against multiculturalism, really. But the issue has come with Islam. And you see the difference because I walk my dog. I have a little tiny dachshund who's the cutest thing ever, long-haired, blonde, like people melt around her. And I walk down in the town where I grew up. We walk around shopping centers, and most people are brown now. They're just brown-skinned. And some come over to me and they love the dog. And they pick her up and they say, sometimes with an accent, but sometimes they just sound English. And they say, oh, I'm just going to take her home. And we joke and we laugh. They are always Hindu. Always. And some people run out the way because they're scared of the dog. They spit, they scowl, they look angry at me, they hate me because I have a little dog. Because in Islam, that is haram, having a dog, especially if you have a black dog. I think the dog issue is one that maybe British people can get around more because we love our dogs so much, as do Americans. So yeah, that is what it's like. You wake up in a country that 20 years ago, you could walk your dog and it wasn't an issue. And today, it's a bit of an issue. Tomorrow, it's going to be even more of an issue.
So again, I sort of know your answer, but so now there's this Manchester attack on the holiest day of the Jewish year. Then it literally, moments after, riots start, they rallies, Hamas rallies, whatever they are. You'd think that they would take an hour off, maybe be like, guys, this isn't the best look. A guy named Jihad just killed these two random Jews, So it's just unending there. But I did see that the reaction online seemed to be a little bit more like, for the first time, Brits were just like, this cannot stand anymore. I suppose your argument is it just doesn't matter. They're going to stand it. They're just a few people tweeting it. But it's just depressing.
Do you know there's been a bit of infighting with the Jews recently, and I'm sure you have this as well in the States, but also not infighting as in woke versus anti-woke. I'm talking anti-woke versus anti-woke. We're all disagreeing now. It's tearing us apart in the UK. It's never been this bad. In decades anyway. Do you know that joke? It was a comedian I love called Josh Howie told it. Two Jews were going to be executed. They were lined up in front of a firing squad, and the sergeant in charge asked each Jew whether he wanted a blindfold or not. And, do you want a blindfold? He asked the first Jew. The first Jew said, yes, okay. Second Jew, do you want a blindfold? He said, no, and started swearing and throwing it everywhere. And at this point, the first Jew leaned over to the second and said, take a blindfold. Don't make trouble. That is the state we're in right now with a lot of Jewish people who, when the Israeli Minister for Diaspora he said he welcomes Tommy Robinson, they didn't just say, hey, I disagree with Tommy Robinson, which is fair enough. They lost their minds and called him a thug and that the Israeli minister's an idiot and all of these things. And I'm sitting here like, guys, we've come on, how long? They're not going to let you in their lefty club. They're not going to let you in.
They're never going to let you in. And Tommy is fighting for all of the right things, for whatever maybe people said his past was or anything else. Like this is basically the last guy in your country fighting for your country.
Yeah. There are issues with Tommy Robinson, and they should be spoken about in a human way because they dehumanize him. And what happened was a lot of prominent Jewish journalists wrote, like, they went crazy and they said, he's a thug, he's this, he's that. Who isn't going to respond to that? Who's not going to retaliate? Especially Tommy, because Tommy doesn't take a breath before responding. And that's maybe one of his weaknesses. It might be one of his strengths as well. He then wrote a lot of stuff which played into tropes about Jews ruling the world and things like that, which then seemed to prove their point. And it wasn't really what I think, knowing Tommy, that he meant. He defends Jews more than most people, and he gets so much hatred from the far right and the Groypers for doing so. So his point was that these guys are the elites who don't understand the regular Jewish people. But the way it came out wasn't great. So there are issues with Tommy. I'm going to be with him in Israel soon, and I'm going to try and bring them to him and say, hey, come on, sometimes don't attack these people whose families have been killed in Israel, those kinds of things. But
right. To me, it's like when I see them go after Tommy Robinson, it's like, it's sort of like Trump. It's like the guy's doing everything he possibly can do. And if there's some like loose language around it, or he occasionally like slips up in a tweet, like it is what it is. Like we all need allies right now. I hate the word ally, but we all need allies. Okay. So if the alarm is at the level that it's at, and there's obviously the free speech stuff too, why are you staying? And I would ask this of any sane person in the UK right now.
Yeah, I think The first thing is just well, you know what, actually, I think one reason to stay is as people say, stay and fight. As I said to you before, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know how one even begins to do that, but I'm here. And I suppose what I try to do is interview more and more, and that's the aim now, celebrities, thought leaders. We saw it recently. There was a guy called Rylan, who's popular in the UK. He was on Big Brother, and he's gay and very flamboyant, and he's on all the morning shows. You know, he could be on Loose Woman or whatever the American equivalent was. He talk shows and things. And he just came out of nowhere, and he's got this strong Essex accent, and he was just like, well, a lot of people are not happy with what's going on with all the immigration. And it was the first time anyone on TV had dared say. Now, everyone went completely, insane. And
wow, a gay against unfettered immigration? What a sellout.
I know. They went crazy, and they all said he's lying about this and that and that. But it was a start. And I think those guys have so much power over the average person. So I think we have to wake people up. So part of it is I want to be here because I want to try and change things. Now, the other part is, look, if they're coming to kill me and my family, like the moment that happens, I need to be out of the country. I don't care what everyone says about, oh, you're leaving a sinking ship. My family comes first. I'm getting the hell out of here. Where do you go? Do you pop over to France and Germany, where it's even worse, and Holland? You know, I used to live in France and Germany. I spent years in these places, and it's just devastating seeing what's happened there. My family's from Argentina. My wife, you met her. I could go back there, but God, it's far away, and it's far away from my family. I've said to you, Texas, Florida, these are places that would be the last places to hold out. I wouldn't go to Israel because just look at that map. Just look at that place on the map and what it's surrounded by, and how can it, I don't know if that's a safe place, as aggressive as the Israelis are. So yeah, America, Argentina maybe, and try and hold out. But for now, let's see what we can do,
Right. Do you sense, so when you see Keir Starmer give lip service to the Manchester attack, or now you've got this Home Secretary who, frankly, as an American, I think she's kind of for this stuff. What's her name? Shabumi? Yeah. Do you have any hope that they will do anything at the moment?
You know what's funny is that
my questions are all very similar, I suppose. I'm just trying to
what do we do?
Something. Yeah.
They're all what do we do? Shabana Mahmood, I was actually skeptical. So far, she's said all the right things and, done the right things as much as she can. I don't want to fall into the trap of imagining that every single Muslim person is against us. At the same time, there is a history for her of talking about how Islam is everything for her. Well, we know what it says in the Quran about Jews, and we know how she feels about Palestine because she was big into that 10 years ago. So it's scary, but I want to try and give her the benefit of the doubt. The funny thing is that Keir Starmer is in a position where he's woefully unpopular. I think he's one of the most unpopular prime ministers we've ever had. And he he'd sort of overcompensates. And some of his tweets are they're like much further than what Trump would say. They're like capital letters, we will get rid of all the immigrants. But nothing happens. People keep coming in. So, yeah. What were you going to say? Sorry. Do you see anyone on the other side of this trying, we were really trying to give the devil his due here. Is anyone on the other side of this trying to reform what's happening there? Our left, which hasn't been completely overtaken by the Islamists yet, the way yours has, although ours is definitely on the way. I'm always trying to find, who's the sane lefty here that could maybe talk to these people. And we've got, 3 guys, basically. It's Bill Maher, but he's hated by the progressives at this point. You've got John Fetterman, 2 or 3 other people, maybe. Do you have anybody on that side that's making a dent against the radicalism? There's a few politicians in Labour who start saying these things, but what does right and left even mean anymore? Because it used to mean economic.
Right.
So if we're talking about social, I guess what you're asking is there anybody on the left who's on the right? And then they're on the right.
Exactly.
As soon as they say anything, they're on the right. So there are people I have on. I had a great guest on called Paul Embury, who was a former sort of unionist. He was with all the trade unions and stuff. That's as lefty as left gets. That's a classical lefty. But they would just describe him as right wing. I had him in my title as left wing trade unionist, but he was just saying, hey, there are British people here whose entire lives have changed, and nobody seems to care. And it's almost look, when I started with my old channel, it was cults and things like that on YouTube. I was Scientology and Hasidic Jews, and I really looked into cults. I wrote a book about them. I was really fascinated by how the cult mindset works. And I went away for many years from England, and then I came back. And I came back and I saw, oh my, you guys are in a cult. It's unbelievable. And when I go on the radio and I try to talk to those lefties that you're talking about, or even people who would call themselves conservatives, but they're a little bit old-fashioned and they don't want to sort of say something that might seem impolite or whatever. I had this recently on a channel called LBC. It's like the main debates radio channel in the UK. And we were talking about the grooming gangs in the UK, which I think everyone watching will know about now. All the, the Muslim grooming gangs. Now, there are British ones, white British grooming gangs as well, unfortunately, but not at the rate that we have grooming gangs among the particularly British Pakistanis. It is just much, much larger. And the problem we had, as you probably know, is that the police ignored it because they feared being racist. We have that on record. We know that. That is an atrocity. That should never, we should never allow these people to forget that. And when you talk to these people, these kind of liberal elites, I should say, on the radio, they will nod and agree and say the right things. And they'll say, yeah, it's terrible. Right. There should never be any, we should never equivocate about someone's race and the grooming gangs and things like that. However, they will then say, however, and they will equivocate in the same sentence. And they did that when I was on the radio. This guy said that. He said, we should never quit, however, you've got to remember that Andrew Tate and the far right and da-da-da-da. And I said, yeah, but Andrew Tate's also Muslim. And Andrew Tate's fan base is Muslim and has a much higher proportion of people who follow Andrew Tate who are Muslim. And then they just have nothing to say. It's just nothing. But it's mad that their answer to try and flip it round and blame the far right is by using one of our most infamous Muslims. It's a bizarre thing.
How far gone is your media as it pertains to all of this? I mean, every time I go on the BBC, if I get one question that isn't completely loaded the wrong way, I'm amazed. And actually, that the day after Charlie Kirk died, I did do an interview for about a half hour. And I thought it was mostly fair. And I was like, I'm shocked that was the BBC, but it was only because it was within hours of his death, I think. How bad in general is your mainstream media at this point?
The British have a very good sense of, propriety, and they believe themselves to be very civilized. So they will probably do better than many other countries when somebody from the other side dies. So that's why you got that fair treatment once ever. Of course, weeks later, the article starts to be written about, he was actually a Nazi or some horrible stuff like that. Right. How far gone? Well, it's the same as you guys. There's the new media, and that old media, you expect them to try and change and adapt because what they're doing isn't really working very well. They're losing audience. They're losing people. They're not doing that. They're just sticking to their guns. And again, I think it's this cultish system you get in an organization like the BBC. I mean, when I want to interview someone, I just call up Dave Rubin and I say hello and we're talking, and that's the interview. Whereas with them, it's like a million different you've got checks you've got to make. After you've done a documentary, you've got to get the legal team involved. You've got to do all of your check on the people that you interviewed afterwards, and all of those things isolated are good things, right? Of course you want to check that this was legal. Right. Of course you want to check it's not fake news. All of those things are really good things. When together over a period of decades, you start to create a really ideological slant. And for example, look at the trans stuff. There's no way an organization now as big as the BBC, with all of its lawyers, with all of its bureaucrats checking everything, could ever give that a fair viewing. So I think it's not necessarily bad people. It's a bunch of people who work for the BBC. There's thousands of them, and every other TV channel apart from GB News and Talk TV and us podcasters. And it's just the system, and it's just going to get worse.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've noticed they do really well, although I've definitely wisened up to it on the BBC, is, when you're ready to do one of those hits with them and, usually doing it online. So you talk to the interviewer for like 30 seconds before, and they're always so pleasant. And with the British accent, it seems doubly nice. And then next thing you know, they're basically throwing you under the bus. So my final question is this, because there's definitely been a theme here. Lay out your country 5, 10, and 20 years from now.
Yeah, I had Professor David Betts. He came on. Is he Canadian? But he's a professor in the UK, and he believes there is an 18.5% chance that in the next 5 years Britain will be in a full-blown civil war within 5 years, and he sees
18.5% chance? That's very specific.
It was very specific. I asked him why exactly, because I also found it oddly specific, but he was sort of adding each year up and dividing by something. He had a really mathematical way of doing it.
Interesting.
And he teaches, I can't remember what university, but he's an eminent professor. And he sees it, he didn't want to frame it, I guess, because he's a professor at a university, he has to be careful. But he framed it instead of sort of Islamists versus white British or whatever, he framed it as urban versus rural, because we're all moving out the cities and the cities are now being taken over. And he imagines all kinds of urban versus rural warfare, which would be like closing the motorway or the highway that runs around London, the M25, and cutting off the power to cities, those kinds of things going on. Now, that's 18%. I don't know, that's 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years. Unless something radical changes that I can't even predict, we will have civil war. I don't even know how it can.
Right, there's no way.
No. So I don't know. Look, I've just bought a house, and I was asking this professor afterwards, like, is this in a good place? And he was looking at it like if war breaks out, and he was like, no.
Is this a good place if war breaks out? I mean, yeah. I don't know. How much are they selling Downton Abbey for now?
But he was talking more about, are you outside of that highway, or are you on the inside of it? That's where it's going to be boarded up and you're going to be stuck. Those are real questions we ask ourselves now. Not even to mention, what is it to be Jewish in this country right now? What is it to be gay? What is it to be a woman in this country as rights are continually taken away? So it's a really, really scary place. And I wish I had some positivity to give you. Like, all I can say is it might not happen and I might be wrong and it might just sort of get a bit shitty for a while, but things are just about okay. And we stop taking immigrants from places that hate us and want us dead. And we instead take refugees maybe from Ukraine or something where they have a more similar culture to our own. But yeah, I don't know. I worry. And we genuinely are sitting there and I'm going, okay, do I want to buy the house? Do I want to put more money into it? Or do I want that money to be fluid so that if I have to leave in a hurry, I've got that money. I can't suddenly sell the house if we're at war. These are real conversations I sit down and have. The Jewish community, at least half of them, are more aware than most people because they know what this is. They've seen this before. So the Jews are there with like a suitcase ready. The rest, well, a lot of the United Kingdom, white British people as well. Then there's the whole situation with, are you familiar with the anywhere versus somewhere people?
No, I don't think so.
It's this great theory that I think is, I can't remember who does it, who came up with it, but people will know and they'll put in the comments. But the anywhere versus somewhere people, I guess you and I would probably be anywhere people in that we are from, middle class families, or even if you're not, you can travel internationally, you move around. A somewhere person either doesn't have access to that, doesn't have interest in that, they are rooted to where they are. So all of this stuff that's happening, the way that streets are changing, it doesn't affect the anywhere people like me and you anywhere near as much as it affects the somewhere people. We can just leave. We'll just pack our bags and we'll go. We hang around in these nice areas. Maybe we get to go on holiday and move. People who are somewhere people, those British flags, which is rare to see in the UK, because American flags are everywhere in the US. It's rare. They put up these British flags and finally they felt like, hey, okay, I've got something because this is my home and I can't leave. This is all I know. They can't just up and go to Argentina or the States. They won't get a visa there. And it's so horrible. It is grotesque to see these kinds of the anywhere people on TV or the liberal elites or whatever shouting at the somewhere people. You're all a bunch of racists. You're all a bunch of idiots. You're thugs. And they're sitting there going, nobody in my pharmacy even speaks my language right now. We're in a low trust society. I can't go out like wearing a skimpy shirt or whatever because people are going to say that's, it's grotesque watching that happen. So,
right. I mean, in many sense that you just described exactly what so many people are feeling during Brexit. The same exact thing, being the regular people, in essence, being lectured. It's interesting because last time I was in London, the other thing I kept thinking when I was walking around was, if you go to Mexico, now obviously most people are Mexican, not every person you're going to meet there is Mexican, but like you have a sense of what the culture is. You have a sense of what the food is and what the music is, and the people are somewhat similar. Where if you walk down the street of London, you have no idea. Every other person that walks by you, well, a lot of them are in what Bill Maher calls the beekeeper costume. So you can only see their eyelids and they're usually not looking at you or giving you a nasty look. But you just it's like, what does make Britain British anymore? And that is the thing you guys, I suppose, will have to grapple with besides fish and chips.
Do you know Catherine Burble Singh? Do you know of her British?
I do. I've interviewed her. I spoke at, what's the school?
Michaela.
Michaela School, which was wonderful, wonderful place. And by the way, there were tons of young Muslim children there who just wanted to learn and be in a place of great education and all of that stuff. It was an incredible experience, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's it. And she's hated by the left. That should be the left's utopia. But whenever they're actually given the thing they want, they discard it. They hate it because then they don't have any like fun work to do. They don't have people.
Well, that's it. You can even see that right now as we're taping this. We're going to hold it for a few days. But, with this Hamas-Israel agreement, it's like they should all be cheering. Oh, my God, the genocide's going to end in 72 hours and blah, 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 blah. But nobody on the left is saying a word about it.
Yeah,
positive.
It won't be fun anymore, man. Where I live right now, and I obviously won't say because but we do live a couple of streets away from 2 mosques. So we go out and you don't see another white person. Not that I need to see white people, but you don't see someone who's not in some kind of non-British religious garb. It would be weird if I just saw nuns all the time. Just all I see out there is a bunch of nuns. I'd be like, what the hell is going on? I've got nothing against nuns, and I don't even mind Muslim people being in their kind of dress and their attire. But when it's that many, it's disconcerting. But I don't know why they can't move it and just be like some Mexicans at least do. Be American, Why can't Muslims move him, be British? But again, why would they? Because we've told them that we're the worst people in the world. We're the colonizers, despite Islam being the biggest colonizing force in the world. We're the worst people ever. And what is Britishness anymore? You're right. What is it? Nobody seems to know, except Catherine Birbal Singh, who's not even British, who's got this school that is something like 90% Muslim. And she sits there and makes them watch the England sports games. She waves English flags around. She tells them, you are English. And they hate her for it, the left. They hate her for it. They want Muslims to come in. And that's what multiculturalism is, unfortunately. And that's why it's going to die. And that's why it's a horrible, horrible thing. I used to think when I was a bit more liberal-minded, I was less political, I suppose. I thought what I think a lot of people thought, which is that multiculturalism is a synonym for multiracial. And I didn't understand that wasn't the case. You can be any race, any whatever, but let's at least try to assimilate to the local culture. Because if I'm in Italy, if I'm in Turkey, if I'm in Morocco, wherever I am, I will try and do that. And that is actually a loss. It might be a small one. It might be a luxury loss, so to speak, to the anywhere people, because they enjoy going on holiday to Italy and it's seeming Italian, and Germany seeming German, and so on. And that's completely lost. I lived in Berlin for 3 years. There's nothing it does nothing like Germany. I was there for 3 years. Nothing seemed German. It was just Turkish and Arabic. I don't know why Turkish and Arabic people can't be there and also embrace German culture while giving a bit of their own culture as well. The Jews have done that as well.
Are you telling me that in Arabic lands there aren't a whole bunch of British people that are having no-go zones and places where they're having tea and that nobody else is allowed that?
Well, you know what? It's funny. We do have that in like Spain, right? And as you might have in Cancun, for example, Americans going down there, or what's it called? Puerto Vallarta or one of those.
Yeah, Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, Vallarta. That's it. I went there years ago. Good fun. But I mean, we do have that, and the locals fucking hate it, right? The Spanish hate that the British are there with all the fish and chip shops and all the bars and the pubs, the English pubs, and not respecting Spanish culture and not learning the language. The Spanish hate it, and they're right to, because it's Spain. And I don't want to go to Spain and just see English culture, because then I'll just stay in England. So this is an issue we're having right now, that I think the main thing is people need to learn the difference between multiculturalism and multiracial. That has to happen like yesterday.
Andrew, I'll offer you the last word here, but I might give a bit of advice, which is that if you are going to think about the United States, we have a communist takeover for many of the reasons that you've just described happening in New York City right now. I'd say it's a half communist, half jihadist takeover of New York, which means that Florida, one of the 2 places that you mentioned, is going to be filling up even more than it's filled up. So you might want to get moving on that. How do you want to end this interview so that people don't want to jump off the bridge?
I'm just going to jump out the window, mate. I'm just gone. I'm just finished. I don't know. I just want us to raise the alarm about it. I want us to remain liberal in traditional liberal sense, just letting people live their lives, but doing so in a way that doesn't lead to the death of everybody. I think a lot of people are responsible for what's happened. We can't just be angry. We need to convince them that the people on the left, the liberal elite, whatever, a lot of people, and no one wants to say this, a lot of people on the Jewish left, the Jewish center, have been part of this. You know, they have been. And I know that plays into a kind of Groyper stereotype, but you talk about New York. It's no surprise that it's New York and places like San Francisco and LA. It's obviously not just Jewish people. It's all sorts of people who move to those places, feel like they're all liberal, fuck the places up, and then move to Austin to try and do the same thing to Texas, you know? Those people will never wake up, but we have to make them try. We have to try to make them wake up. That's what I want to leave people with.
Well, Andrew, I am supposedly going to be in London in June for Jordan Peterson's next art conference. And unless you fled to America at that point, fish and chips on me.
Oh, thanks, man. See you then.
Good to see you, my friend. If you're looking for more eye-opening and worldly conversations, make sure to dive into our international playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.